welcome to Lakeside Chats with Lexia. Today we have Gabriella Williams on the show. Gabriella is the editor-in-chief of Furman's student-led literary and visual arts magazine, The Echo. She's an English major on the writing track. Thank you so much for joining me, Gabriella. So today you're not only here as a representative of The Echo, but also as an investigative journalist. So could you tell us a little bit about what your story was with the Silent Echo and how you got to there?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. The Silent Echo is the story of the 1955 issue of The Echo, which was incredibly special because at that time the students had submitted essays on desegregation in favor of it. And when the administration found out, they moved to destroy all 1,500 copies, which is pretty incredible. But one student managed to save one copy and preserve it. And so that's how we were able to find out about it and read it. But it's really an incredible story.
So what was your kind of process for that investigation? I know I've heard there was, again, that one copy that was held in the archives, but how did you kind of find out about that and decide that that was a story you wanted to do?
Well, over the summer, I knew I was going to be fortunate enough to hold the position of editor-in-chief, and I decided to do some research just on the Echo in general. And I don't remember exactly where it came up, but I do know that during my research, I noticed something about the 1955 issue being destroyed. And that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of things and a lot of research actually done by Dr. Tollison, who teaches history here. And I was really interested in it. So when the time came for me to make a documentary, I thought it would be the perfect topic.
Absolutely. So being so heavily involved in the Echo now, holding your position that you do, how do you think that this monumental event kind of altered the history for the future going forward?
There were a lot of different elements of it that have had an impact on the current Echo. One of the largest ones was that at the time, administration and faculty would oversee all of the Echo. And there was an advisor for it, and they would just meticulously go through it. But after this event, in the actual year right after it, they decided to disband that faculty group.
Oh, wow.
And create the Student Media Board, which now hosts the Paladin, FUNC, and the Echo. So that has kind of led it in more of the completely student-run and led direction. And now what we have is a magazine that still has advisors, but is for and by the students of Furman University.
That's incredible. Do you see that process ever kind of, like, how do the professors engage with you all? How does that advising kind of occur without them overstepping as this happened in 1955?
I would say the advising is very hands-off. It's more in the case of helping the board kind of understand their positions and what the Echo has been like in the past, and just kind of make sure that it keeps running through the years. But it's nowhere what it used to be, where they were just kind of censoring and going through it back in the 50s.
Of course, of course. So what advice would you give to someone who's kind of working on an investigation of their own?
I would say look everywhere. I found a lot of information in sources I never expected. And even when I thought I had found everything, I kept digging and there was more when I didn't expect it. So if you're doing investigative journalism, talk to as many people as you can. I spoke to faculty members, learned more things. I went to the archives and got to see our surviving copy, which was incredible. I was very fortunate to see that. But just keep going and just look where maybe you might think there isn't something, but there could be, and it could be pretty big.
Absolutely. So how did you kind of go about cultivating those resources for that? And I know that you talked about kind of you jumped down that rabbit hole, but where did that begin? Like, where was your starting point for that?
I think it was genuinely, it might have even been on Furman's Wikipedia page, but there was like a small note in the bottom that was like, oh, and by the way, in 1955, they destroyed the Echo. And there was like a little linked source at the bottom, and I think it led to one of Dr. Tollison's papers. And so I was quick to kind of schedule a time to speak with her.
Of course.
And she had a lot of research, not only on this event, but kind of surrounding things, segregation in schools in general, the Brown versus Board of Education decision, that kind of all contributed to this. But a lot of it was archival and going through and finding the actual essays. And then in 2005, there were actually interviews of the people who had submitted their essays. So
Wow.
that was pretty incredible to read.
That is so incredible. Have you been able to get into contact with any of those people?
Unfortunately not. One of the authors was Joan Lipscomb. We have awards named after her on campus. She was an incredible person, but she passed away, I believe, in 2018. And I was not able to get in contact with the others because we're not sure if they're still around or what's going on with that. But I would have liked that. That would have been incredible.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about your story. How can someone go about submitting to the Echo if they're like, this has really piqued my interest? How can somebody get involved?
Well, submissions for the Echo are open right now. They close at midnight on February 16th. We accept fiction, poetry, nonfiction, photography, visual art, which could be costuming, collage, needlepoint, painting, anything. And that is at furmanecho.submittable.com/submit. And that's also linked everywhere on our LinkedIn page and on our Instagram, which is at the.furman.echo.
So anyone who is out there who is looking to maybe submit to the Echo, what advice would you give them? How did you I know you're a senior, you're super involved with the Echo now, but when you were kind of in that first stage of pondering if you should submit, what would you say to them?
Definitely submit. There's a lot of reasons to submit. One, it's one of the oldest literary magazines in the nation, which I also found out during my research. And when you submit your work, you get to retain the copyright on it. That's pretty rare to be published as an undergrad, keep your copyright, and it's one of the oldest literary magazines in the nation. So that's pretty special, but just don't be afraid to submit. Submit multiple things. It doesn't have to be just one. And just kind of put your work out there because you never know what will happen.
Up next, we'll be showing the Silent Echo as well, so be sure to stick around for that. Thanks so much again for joining me, Gabriella. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me.